What is going on, guys? Stefan here with you, S&E's Garage. Today we're going to be servicing the transmission on our 2016 Lexus GSF. Now, I just want to start by saying we are doing this service very early in this transmission's life. It's only got 39,000 miles on it, and I was not planning on doing this until the car had around 60 on it. But I did have several comments requesting when I was going to be doing one of these videos, because you guys wanted to see my take on it compared to some of the other videos on YouTube. Because as you know, when we do things right. So we have torque specs for everything. We have every single part you're going to need, and we have 5 quarts of Toyota WS trans fluid. The transmission should only take between 4 and 4.5 to fill, but we're going to put all 5 in there. That way, when we go ahead and open our inspection port, I know I'm not going to have to add any fluid, because then I would have to go through the whole warm-up process again. Now, we are also going to be taking a sample of this 40,000 mile or 39,000 mile transmission fluid that we drain out and sending it over to Blackstone Laboratories to get their take on the fluid, just to see if this service was really even necessary at this mileage. Like I said, I think I'm wasting my time, but I'm doing this more for you guys than I am for me. So there's several parts you're going to need here. First, you're going to need the strainer. That is part number 35330-50030. Traditionally, I would never change this. Again, this is something that I'm doing for YouTube. Traditionally, if you have enough clutch material in your transmission to clog this strainer, you have a lot more going on than just needing a service. But again, this is for YouTube. Second, you're going to need your 2 crush washers here. There's one for the drain plug and one for the fluid inspection plug. It's going to be part number 35178-30010. You are going to need a transmission pan gasket. That is going to be part number 35168-50010. You are going to need your O-ring for the strainer. That is part number 90301-31014. And then last but not least, you need a new O-ring for the fill plug on the side of the transmission. That is part number 90301-15004. Now, my intention here is to make the best video available for the AA80E, which is the 8-speed automatic transmission in your Lexus ISF, GSF, RCF, IS500, and I believe they use these in the LS460 or, a couple of other different vehicles. I'll make sure I add them in the video description, and I will also be sure to add them in the tags so that if you search for this video, you'll see it. So before you start your fluid change or your transmission service, you're going to want to make sure that your transmission is cold, like stone cold. I just had to move this from my main garage, the attached garage in the house, into the shop here. So I am going to let it sit for an hour or two just to get back down to ambient temperature, and then we're going to get it up in the air and we're going to get started. Now, in order to do this service properly, you're going to need one of 2 things. Number 1, you're going to have to follow this procedure right here. I'm going to link it in the video or drop it in the video right now. And what this is going to do is put your car into transmission fluid inspection mode. And you're basically going to watch your cluster, and when that park indicator starts blinking, you know you're in the temperature window. You can go ahead and do your fluid adjustment. Now, if you're like us and you have a scan tool, we're going to be using the X-Tool D8 to monitor our transmission temperature. I just find this more accurate because you know exactly where you are in the window, and while you're doing the fluid inspection, you'll be able to see if for some reason you get out of the window, and you'll know you need to start over. It's just more accurate, and that's the way we're going to be doing it. Now, if you have an ISF, you're going to want to get your transmission temperature between 95 degrees and 105 degrees. If you have a GSF, RCF, IS500, and so on, you're going to want to get the transmission temperature between 113 degrees and 133 degrees. Okay, guys, so we got the car up in the air. Let's go ahead and get our bearings here. Your transmission's going to be right back here underneath this plastic pan. And the first thing that we need to do is to go ahead and remove that. There's going to be some plastic bolts here. They look like 12 millimeters. And then there is a 10 here and a 10 here. and then we can drop this pan. Now, as far as the fill plug is going to be this guy right here, and you are going to need a special socket to get to that. You need a thin profile 24mm socket. I'll link one of these in the video description below. That is really going to be the only specialty tool you're gonna need. The fluid adjustment bolt here is going to be an Allen key. I don't know what size it is, I'll tell you. And then the drain plug here looks like is going to be a 14mm. And then the pan is just held in with a barrage of 10mm nuts, or bolts rather. So again, the only specialty tool you're gonna need is that socket, and I will leave one in the video description below. Now, if you don't have one of these, I'm also going to recommend one of these guys to put in your drain pan. It is an enlarged transmission drain pan that will basically, once the transmission pan is down, we're gonna have fluid dripping from everywhere under here, and it's just gonna capture all that, prevent yourself from making a mess. So I'll leave one of them in the video description below as well. But let's go ahead, drop this pan, or this shield. And then the first thing we're gonna do before we even touch this pan is we're gonna go ahead and open that fill plug just to make sure that we can get it off. You do not want to drain your transmission without first removing the method to fill it, because if you drain it and then find out that you can't fill it, you're in for a very bad day. So, pull this down. That's weird, one's a 12 and one's a 10. Okay, now let's go ahead. I'm just gonna grab a ratchet and a wrench and remove the other two 10s. All right, now where they put the front bolts for this, they will not come all the way out without dropping this whole little brace here. I'm not gonna bother doing that. I just went ahead, I bungee corded it over here to just in front of the control arm after loosening those bolts a bit. And you'll see that that shield is completely out of our way. So now, like I said, let's go ahead, grab our 24mm and remove the fill plug, and then we'll go ahead and start draining it. Now, another reason you want to do this on a cold car is you're in very close proximity here to the exhaust, and nobody wants to get burned by a hot exhaust. So, and that should not be on there tight. And you should, once you break it loose, to an extent, be able to get it out by hand. But let's walk it out. And now it's coming out by hand. Okay, and this O-ring here is one of the O-rings that we are going to be replacing, that we ordered when we started the job. So now let's go ahead, get our pan here. Let's start draining this trans, and like I said, we're gonna grab a sample of this and send it out to get analyzed, just so I kind of have an idea, and for you guys too, because I know a lot of you guys want to be on top of your cars. And you know, like I said, we're at 39,000 and like 10 miles. So this will give you a good idea of what this fluid looks like about 3/4 of its life. Because like I said, I ordinarily would not do this until around 60,000 miles. Now, like we said, this should be a 14mm, which it is. Let's go ahead, break it loose. I'm gonna go ahead and get my Blackstone Laboratories bottle here so that we can collect our sample. And I can already tell you just by looking at this, absolutely wasting our time here. This fluid is still nice, and it's not red, but it's still, you can see it's still transparent. You can see right through it. So, and it still smells like brand new trans fluid. Now this washer here on this drain plug is also something that we are going to be replacing. Okay guys, so we're slowing down to a trickle here. So what we're gonna start doing now is there is a bracket up here that connects to the exhaust that we need to remove. So if you have an aftermarket exhaust like us, we just have two 14mm, it's a nut and bolt. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that from the inside of both flanges, and then we're going to drop this bracket, and that'll give us access to the whole transmission pan. Now, once we are ready to drop the pan, we're just going to screw this drain plug in lightly, basically. I haven't replaced the washer yet because when we drop this pan, if you look, this is recessed up. So this whole bottom of this pan is still going to have some fluid in it, and we don't want to spill that. And by tilting the pan, it could potentially spill. So let's get that bracket off, and then let's drop the pan. Just like that, brackets off. Now we have full access to that pan. All right, let's go ahead and just thread our drain bolt back in. And now we're gonna pull the pan. Making sure I'm not blocking your view here, guys, sorry. Now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna thread one or two of these in. I'd probably do two, one on each corner, lightly, just to prevent this from, for whatever reason, crashing down and covering you in transmission fluid, because that would definitely not be a good time. But you'll see we should have all of our bolts out minus the two that we left in. So let's go ahead, go get our dead blow hammer and just lightly tap the pan until it breaks loose. Okay, now that we tapped it loose, let's go ahead and just get a flat head here and start seeing if we can pry it down. Problem here is there really aren't that many good pry points because the exhaust is very much in the way. There it comes. She's coming. Now when you're doing this, you do want to be careful not to damage any of the mating surface of this gasket. And we're looking good now. Okay, let's go ahead and take our two bolts off. Now we can very slowly that is what we wanted to avoid. But now you'll see our pan is down and I have a little bit of a mess to clean up. But let's let this drip dry for a little bit and then we'll go ahead and change that filter. All right guys, so while we have our transmission drip drying over there, we're going to go ahead and prep this pan for reinstallation. Now there's one thing I want you to take note of here. This right here is the little standpipe that is built into the pan to adjust the fluid level. So when this transmission pan is in the transmission, the fluid level will sit just at the level of this standpipe. Now there's a couple of things here we have to do. First and foremost, we have to go ahead and remove this old gasket from the pan. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to discard it. Now while you are in here, you are just going to want to take a good look in the pan and look for metal. Small bits of metal, you know, little shavings are normal. An automatic transmission by design creates metal shavings. And you're going to want to clean off your magnets. Now if this is the first time you're changing your transmission fluid and dropping the pan, they're going to be loaded with metal because of the break-in period. So you'll see these have a pretty good amount of metal on them. So we're just going to clean them up as best we can. You don't need to be perfect here. And then if you look on the pan, there's little indentations where they want the magnets. So we're just going to set them aside. And then before we put the pan up, we're going to make sure that we replace them. So let me just off camera here, clean up the rest of these magnets, make them look real good. And then I'm going to wipe the pan down. Okay guys, so what you're going to see here is a nice clean transmission pan with some nice clean magnets in it. I'm just gonna give it one more quick little wipe down here. And this transmission, like I said, it really didn't need this service. So nothing in here is really in need of a very deep cleaning. So I didn't even use any brake cleaner on this or solvents. I just wiped it down real good with some paper towels. I cleaned the magnets with some paper towels, and I use a little bit of brake clean on them, but everything here is good. So let's go ahead, let's get our new gasket, let's set it on the pan. It can only go on one way, so you literally cannot mess this up. Okie dokie, here's our new gasket. The part with the 2 bolts is going to face the front. So we're just going to go ahead and walk the gasket on around the pan. Okay. We're just going to cover this pan up. Let's go over to the car. Let's go ahead, change the filter, and clean the mating surface for the pan. So the filter is going to be held in with 4 10mm bolts. When you take them off, they tend to want to sling transmission fluid everywhere. So I just put my hand here so that I don't get covered in it. Okay, now this should drop right down. Now when you drop this, let me just put this gun down. A bunch of fluid is going to pour out of the front of the torque converter, or in the front of the valve body. So just beware of that. And let's just let the strainer drain. Now this rubber O-ring here, we're going to be replacing, so you do not need to reuse it. Just make sure you place the new O-ring onto your strainer, because if you don't, you will have problems. The fluid will be aerated and your transmission will not shift correctly. One thing I hate about servicing transmissions, it's messy. So here is our new strainer. Go ahead and open it. Okay, going to face it down. And here is our new O-ring. Going to go ahead and slide it on. Now I am going to take some transmission fluid here with a clean finger. Okay, and I'm just going to coat this O-ring with transmission fluid, because We do not want to rip this O-ring on the installation because it is literally, it's super important that this O-ring seals. So let's go ahead and slide this in. Now in some cases that O-ring will be stuck up in here. Just if it is, make sure you pull it out. But we can now go ahead and slide this into place like so and reinstall our bolts. And we are going to be torquing them to spec. All right, now the torque spec for the strainer is 7 foot-pounds, no more, no less. So that is exactly what we are going to do here. Okay, so now that we got the strainer torqued down and installed, let's go ahead, wipe down the mating surface for the pan, and let's go grab our pan. All right, guys, here is our nice clean transmission pan with nice clean magnets. And again, we're just gonna go ahead and get it started, and then we are going to be torquing these down to spec. Now we started every single one of them by hand. And with my gun, I am not even gonna run them down hard at all. I'm literally just gonna get it to the pan, touches. Okay, so now we are going to torque these down to 65 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, but inch-pounds. Okay, I'm just gonna go around the mulberry bush here. Now it is important that you torque these down because this is a rubber gasket. And if you apply too much torque to these, what can actually happen is you can squish the gasket and blow it out the side of the pan, and you'll end up with a leaky pan, and nobody wants a leaky pan. So that is why with transmissions, I don't mess around. Everything gets torqued to spec, it gets the fluid it calls for, and it gets done right. And this goes for whether I'm working on my car, a customer's car, a friend's car. Transmissions especially get done right. Okay, so that was where I started. So let's just go over all these again, make sure the first couple are torqued. All right, transmission is done, or the transmission pan is done. Let's go ahead and give it a real nice wipe down, and then we'll go ahead and fill the trans up. So before we fill this trans, we're just gonna go ahead and pull this drain plug again. We're gonna pull this gasket off that we did not replace yet. And then we're gonna go ahead and replace it and tighten the drain plug. This I'm not gonna torque down. Number one, I don't know the spec, and number two, all you have to do is bottom out the crush washer and then go about a quarter turn. That will crush the crush washer a bit and you won't have any problems. All right, guys, so off camera, we have gone ahead and stuck our fill apparatus up into the transmission, and we went ahead and
basically put it into a quart of WS trans fluid. Now I did just put a squirt of this through the pump and into the drain pan just to clean the pump out. And now we're just going to go ahead and fill the trans. All right, and we're just going to continue to do this 4 more times. So I'm not going to record all that, and we'll be back with you once it's full. All right, guys, we went ahead and filled our transmission. So now we're just going to take this O-ring off of the fill plug. We're going to remove it and set it aside. And we're going to get our new one. Okay. We're going to go ahead, get it out. We're going to stick it on the drain plug, and now we're just going to reinstall this. I put more than enough fluid into this transmission to know that I'm not going to have to open that drain plug again. So we're just going to go ahead and snug it down. So before you begin the fluid adjustment procedure, you just want to go ahead and make sure you reinstall your bracket here for the catalytic converters. The reason I say to do it now is because, number one, everything here is going to get really hot and you don't want to be touching this after you're done adjusting the fluid. And secondly, you don't want to create an exhaust leak and blow out your exhaust gasket. So we just reinstalled it really quick, and now we're going to go ahead and begin the fluid adjustment procedure. All right, guys, so if you do not have a scan tool, now is going to be the time where you need to put this thing into fluid adjustment mode. Again, I'll drop it in the video a second time right here. But what you'll see here is we have our automatic transmission oil temperature 1 graphed, and we are at 83.7 degrees. Now, because this is a GSF and not an ISF, we need to do this between 113 and 133 degrees. Now, the first thing we're gonna do before we do anything is, number one, we're gonna get in the car, we're gonna start it, and we're gonna go park, reverse, neutral, drive, and you want to stay in each gear about 6 seconds. We're going to do that 2 or 3 times just to get all of that trans fluid into all the patches in the valve body, into all of the solenoids. We want as much fluid in the valve body as possible. That way, when we do the adjustment procedure, we're not draining too much fluid. Second, you're going to want to have your 5mm, right here it is, 5mm Allen key on standby, because as soon as you hit that 113 degrees, we need to get up under the car and crack that adjustment plug loose. And while it's draining, we're going to go ahead and replace that gasket. I have it here in this envelope. And once it slows to a trickle, we're going to go ahead and replace it. So let's get up and into the car. Again, we're going to shut the door. You're going to want your air conditioning off. So again, off. Now we're going to go reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Neutral. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Drive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Back into neutral. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Park. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Neutral. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Drive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now, because we're not putting it into the adjustment procedure, we're just going to throw it back in park. We're going to hop out, and we're going to raise the car, and we're just going to monitor that transmission oil temperature. All right, guys, so right now we're sitting right around 101 degrees. We got a couple of degrees to go. We got about 12 degrees to go. Once we hit 113, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead, start recording again. We'll open up that overflow with our 5mm Allen key. And we're also going to be changing our clutch washer at that time as well. All right, guys, we're sitting at about 110 degrees right now. We got 3 degrees left. All right, guys, 113. It's go time. And we're just gonna let this drain until it slows down to a trickle. All right, I'm good with that. I got my new crush washer. Let's go ahead, install it. All right, guys, and now we can go ahead, shut the car down, clean the pan up, and put our shield back up. And that's going to be it for this video. This should show you step-by-step how to replace the transmission fluid in your Lexus vehicle equipped with the AA80E, whether that's in a F car, an IS500. I gave you all the information you need, torque specs, part numbers, fluid windows for which, vehicle you have, whether it's an ISF, a GSF, RCF, whatever you have. Now we are sending out this oil sample to Blackstone Laboratories. I do think it's going to be pretty interesting to see what kind of life WS transmission fluid has as far as the laboratory is concerned. I'm more curious to see what is left of the additive package and what they have to say about the oil. Because like I said, 40,000 miles is rather low of a drain interval for WS. I usually do it around 60, but let's see what the laboratory has to say. I'm going to make another video on that, so stay tuned for the next video. And if this helped, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.